sets you off.
Okay, so this is the Mythic Pit Ice Shard setup, and I'm going to go over the gear. First things first, the way the infusion works, and I've been preaching that you want fire damage. Yeah, well, that was a lie because it's bugged, or I was told completely incorrectly how the Smoldering Ember infusion works. So whenever you see fire damage, you want Hydra damage. Alright, so let's start off with the Ale of Verklis. The first thing you want here, you want to max that aspect at 100%, then intelligence, then attack speed, then cooldown reduction are the most important things. Because we're casting Hydra every 2 to 5 seconds, we need something to do in the downtime, and that's cast Ice Shards, and we get double damage from it. Then you want Shroud of False Death because this chest piece is OP, +1 to all passives, fat amount of all stats and max life, no more to say. Then we go into our Storm Swell gloves. You don't want Fire Starter anymore because the infusion doesn't fucking work how I was told multiple times it does. So you want Storm Swell because it's the biggest raw damage multiplier. Int, attack speed, ranks to core, fire damage, and then you can take Barrier Gen or Teleport Nova Size. There's a little bit of value here with Orange Herald in the Elementalist glyph with Teleport Nova Size. Don't fret it. Next is Axial Conduit. So you want the only thing that matters on here is the resource generation and maximum. You want to cap this out as high as you can at 87%, and that's because it scales our Serpentine aspect. This is 62% damage on pants. The damage reduction is the next thing that matters if you're looking for a 2GA or something. Then we run Orange Herald Boots. Orange Herald helps reset our Inferno Ultimate for 50% damage. The important thing on here is that you have armor and attacks reduce evade. You want attacks reduce evade so that when you want, you can swap to Teleport Enchant for speed farming. And then the armor here, when combined with, as you see, we have 571 armor. When we combine it with our Song of the Mountain and our Soothing Spices, we hit 1,000 armor. If you don't have GA armor, you can just crit it a couple times. You'll be all right. And then we move on to Serpentine. So you can run a staff or a wand focus. I'll get into that later after we get through everything. But int, max life, lucky hit chance to restore. You're going to want Hydra damage. And then you're going to want to max out the casted Hydras. You can get upwards of 6 heads. This is where you slot Serpentine. More mana you have, the more damage you deal. Then we move on to a focus. So here's the thing. If you want to run a staff, you can. You can drop, I would drop Storm Swell. And I would probably keep Flash Fire, but then you would have a staff with Serpentine on it, and you would have Flash Fire for this Pyromancy critical strike damage on your gloves. But the wand focus just plays a lot snappier, and it feels better to play, so that's why I use it. You have Int, and then you do have Max Resource to help scale your damage, cooldown reduction, Hydra damage, and then Caster Hydras have 6 heads. Then we move into Battle Casters for 10 more Hydra ranks. That's a lot, especially when you don't have Starless or Shako. It's a ton of damage, like 60, 70%, something like that. But Int, Max Life, Attack Speed, Hydra Damage, and Inferno CDR. I'd say the Attack Speed and the Inferno CDR are the most important things on here. Then we go into Tal Rashas Loop, which is on every Sorc build. 21, you can get a lot of cooldown reduction on here. That's important. But you're looking for that 25% aspect value to give you 75% damage. Then we go into Ophidian Iris. So all these Hydra head tempers that you have, they get converted into damage because your Hydra gets locked at 3 heads, and you get 100% more damage for each head it would have had. So when you're looking at 16 heads, you only get 3. You get 13, 14, 100% more damage. It gets a little crazy. So the most important things on here are in order: the aspect value, then the ranks to primordial binding. Then a bit of a toss-up between intelligence and attack speed. It's pretty mathy. I don't know exactly. And then Pyromancy damage is in last place. And if you had a 4GA that was 70%, I would probably honestly use a 750 power 100% over that. It's that much more damage when you have a high aspect value. So I play and like the Ice Shard setup, but there's a setup involving Inferno and Hydra with Harlequin Crest. Shako, that's less actions per minute. So what we end up doing is we drop Ice Shards for Ice Blades, and our main loop is casting Hydra and Inferno, and then we're sort of just spamming Ice Armor, Teleport, Flame Shield, and Ice Blades. We're just ripping them. And then there's a lot less going on in between Hydra casts, just sort of waiting for your cooldowns. I found it a little boring, but some people really like it. It's the same exact build. There's just some skill tree tweaks. You just check out the guide. I have both saved in my armory, so I can swap to them on a whim. Powers, everything's the same, so it's pretty chill. But here, the cool thing about Shako is, you get a ton of cooldown. some DR, but you're missing 100% damage from the Verglis. But you can make up some of it with the skill ranks and the max resource, because that'll really bloat up your max mana so that you can really use the Serpentine aspect to full effectiveness. Now for our incenses and elixirs, we're going to want Resourcefulness to increase our max mana for more damage from Serpentine, Sage's Whisper for more intelligence, Song of the Mountain to shore up our armor, and Soothing Spices to shore up our armor and give us a little bit more res. And then once we pop all of them, you should see your armor gets over 1,000. Alright, so let's talk about our runes. So we're running Igni and Ceh as our first. This is going to give us permanent uptime on our Spirit Wolves. These little guys right here, you can get upwards of 6 of them, and they're great. When they attack things, they freeze them, and they apply Vulnerable. And they also count as Conjurations to give us max stacks for our Primordial Binding for damage, mana regen, and movement speed. They're just amazing. Next is Neo and Zec. So after we cast our Inferno, we'll have anywhere between an 8 to a 12 or 14 second cooldown, depending on your gear. Let's see. All right, so we'll cast our Inferno, and then as you can see, every 2 seconds, our Inferno is going down by 2. Yep. So that's what that does. Every 2 seconds, it reduces our Inferno cooldown by 2. When you don't have Inferno on some of the earlier variants, we're going to run the Cry rune so that we can suck up enemies and get them close to us so that the AoE from the Hydra can blast them. Now for our enchantments, we want Hydra Enchantment and Familiar Enchantment. Now, Hydra Enchantment doesn't scale that well into the end game because of some issues with Serpentine not fully benefiting from the extra Hydra head tempers, but it still has value in the fact that it's a fire damage enchant, so we get more damage out of Enchantment Master, and when we're farming, it lets you kill stuff a lot faster. And then next we take Familiar Enchant. Familiar is coded as fire damage and lightning, so we get a second fire damage enchant to get another 20% damage out of Enchantment Master. And then when we do make a Familiar, we get an extra 10% damage with fire from the invoked Familiar node. Let's quickly go over our skill tree. 2 points in Firebolt just to progress. We're going to grab this Devastation for more damage, from Serpentine for more mana. Elemental Dominance. Hydra is now a core skill with the Amulet, more damage. Glass Cannon, damage. We're going to go for Shimmering Teleport for damage reduction. 1 point in Flame Shield just to get it. Go down to Shimmering Ice Armor here. As we spend mana, we're going to have permanent uptime on our Ice Armor for a fat barrier. We're going to max out Hydra. We're going for the Invoked Hydra node for 50% crit strike damage and 20% crit chance. Then we're going to go for Protection so that we can get a fat barrier in case our Ice Armor goes down by casting some of our cooldowns. We're going to go for Primordial Binding. You can get upwards of, 20-22% if you have a better amulet. And then that's like 220% damage just by having all your 10 conjurations out. And then Mana Shield, we're going to get 40% DR, which is we're just going to have up permanently because Hydra is consuming all our mana. Let's get back into our skill tree here. So we go for Invoked Hydra. As we cast Hydra we're going to make Familiars because of our enchantment, and then we're going to get 10% more fire damage. Then we're going to go for Inner Flames for more damage. Devouring Blaze for more crit strike damage with our Hydra. We're going to grab these 3 Frost passives that we do on all builds. Damage to Frozen, damage for having a Frost skill on the bar, and just damage to Vulnerable. We're going to max out Inferno here. It gives us a pull now, and we deal 50% more damage, and it makes enemies vulnerable. Then we're just going to go here for Soulfire. We're not doing a lot of standing still, but we're going to get 8% damage out of it for most of the time. We go for Elemental Synergies. We have 3 fires on the bar. That's going to give us 12% damage. We're going to go for Evocation for 16% CDR. And then last but not least, we're going to take Acer's Ferocity. This gives us 75% damage and 40% crit strike chance. There's a little bit of an activation component. It's always going to be active on bosses, and it's going to be active most of the time when you're mobbing, as all it takes is 1 critical strike to kill an enemy, and then both bonuses are active. Otherwise, it's split between enemies above half-life and enemies below half-life. And that's why we don't really run an Execute Arcana in the build. We don't want it stealing any procs from us. Alright, so now let's talk about the Paragon. So our glyphs are going to be Conjurer, Destruction, Elementalist, Pyromaniac, and Tactician. So on our starter board, we're going to take Tactician. We like to boost up our non-physical damage here. Then we're going to run into Elementalist. That's also going to boost up our non-physical. Really great stuff. And then we're going to take Enchantment Master. Because of our 2 fire enchantments, we're going to get 60% more fire damage out of this. Next, we're going to go into Searing Heat. It's going to give us 15% critical strike chance with our Hydras and another 60% direct damage. Then we're going to round it out with Pyromaniac. It's going to increase our fire damage by 10%, and another 18% as we cast Pyromancy skills. It's going to boost our fire damage and our critical strike damage. Then we go into Fundamental Release. It's a 50% damage board just by applying Vulnerable, Burning, or Critically Striking. It's a little bit less than some other boards that are 60%, but what it makes up for is in damage reduction. There's some very good DR Healthy, All DR, and Max Life, and DR Vuln. Very good board. We're going to slot Destruction here for a large amount of critical strike damage. Last but not least is Frigid Fate. Now you can sub this board for Elemental Summoner. There's a bit more attack speed on there, but this board's a bit cheaper to path through initially, so you know when you're lacking some Paragon points, it's super nice. But we'll go for this Frigid Fate here for 1.6x damage to vulnerable enemies, and we're going to round it out with Conjurer, which gives us a very large amount of Conjuration damage for our Hydra and 15% crit strike chance. Last but not least, the Ophidian Iris. Ophidian Iris, Hydra is now a core skill. That's why we have the core ranks.
Will this be on the test?
No.
Oh.